Um, so the 18-year-old white 18-year-old who shot and killed 10 people at the Buffalo supermarket had researched the local demographics while looking for places of high concentration of black residents. For the record, that's why he chose Buffalo, the supermarket that he chose, the neighborhood that he chose. Arriving there at least a day in advance to conduct reconnaissance, law enforcement officials said Sunday. Authorities said the gunman shot in total 11 black people and 2 white people on Saturday in a rampage motivated by racial hatred that he broadcasted live. And he was identified as Patron Gendron, had previously threatened a shooting at his high school at last June, a law enforcement official told the Associated Press. Buffalo Police Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia said the then 17-year-old was brought in for a mental health evaluation afterwards. Meanwhile, federal authorities were still working to confirm the authenticity of a racist 180-page manifesto that detailed the plot and identified Gendron by name as the gunman, the law enforcement told AP. But the shooting, the latest act of mass violence in a country unsettled by racial tensions, gun violence, and a recent spate of hate crimes, left local residents shattered. It also prompted New York Governor Kathy Hochul, a Buffalo native, to demand the technology industry take responsibility in its role for propagating hate speech. Hochul told ABC that the heads of tech companies need to be held accountable and assure all of us that they're taking every step humanly possible to be able to monitor this information. How these depraved ideas are fermenting on social media, it's spreading like a virus, she said Sunday, adding that a lack of oversight could lead to others to emulate the shooter. Twitch said in a statement that it ended Gendron's transmission less than 2 minutes after the violence started. Screenshots purporting to be live from the Twitch broadcast appear to show racial epithets scrawled on the rifle in the attack, including the number 14, a likely reference to the white supremacist slogan. Now, Kathy Hochul, who is the governor of New York, of course, is going to look for anything and everything she can say. Obviously, there is, once again, there is something to be said about radicalization that occurs on the internet. But you can't radicalize comfortable people, okay? It's not as easy to radicalize comfortable people that are not suffering, okay? You cannot radicalize people who are not victims to their material circumstances as readily, easily as you can someone who is fucked up. Whether it's because they don't have access to adequate mental health care in this country, which is dog shit, in many countries is dog shit, or more importantly than just the radicalization that occurs, you can't really radicalize people in the opposing, in opposition to the pre-existing dominant hegemonic attitudes that are white supremacist. Okay, that's the fucking point. That's the like he talks about how he's radicalized by 4chan in his manifesto, right? How he was able to reach out to white supremacists who red pilled him and made him into a based edgelord, right? But class reductionism, that's not class reductionism. I believe you're misunderstanding exactly what the fuck I'm saying if you think that it's class reductionism. Class and race are in many circumstances impossible to fucking remove from one another in most of the whether we talk about like racial subjugation or not. Class and race are completely married to one another in this country, in the history of this country, and throughout history in general. Okay? Now, not only that, but also I'm not doing class reductionism or whatever the fuck. I'm quite literally explaining to people that this kind of radicalization cannot occur without a white supremacist base, okay? And that white supremacist base comes from our white supremacist structures. So just because you sanitize social media, which would be impossible to fucking effectively enforce anyway, just like when people use the NetzDG German hate speech laws against me regularly to try to get my fucking Twitch stream region locked whenever I talk about this shit, which I'm sure is happening currently as Nazis are aggressively clicking the NetzDG spam report every moment that I'm live, okay? Suck me, by the way. Like, that is inadequate. That is an inadequate way to try to combat hate speech, which Nazis will routinely use to their own favor. That even if it was an adequate way of stopping hate speech from flowing, that would not be that would not work to effectively stop radicalization from occurring. You can't, one, fully destroy this kind of white supremacist attitude. Okay, but even if you were to combat it effectively on the internet, you still have Tucker Carlson, you still have the Republican Party. This kind of attitude is spread through every facet of existence, when it also is very much a foundational principle of how a lot of our structures are developed. the criminal justice system, even fucking redlining is a great example of like, or the way that our cities are built. City planning is a great example of how racism and racial subjugation is built into every facet of our existence. There's a reason why fucking highways separate black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods. There's a reason why black neighborhoods are kept impoverished, and the way that we tax and the way that we fund education in this country is unequal. And that's precisely why places like the Chicago public school system literally are just like crippled and underfunded, whereas white neighborhoods are doing much, much better and have much better public schooling. That is deliberate. That is by design. That is just a further continuation of the subjugation that was baked into American history, okay? Just because you don't recognize it personally, or you think, oh man, that sounds so silly. Pfft, highways are racist now? What else is racist? Doesn't change the deliberate reality as to why that design was put in place. And the deliberate reality was specifically that, to separate black people and other immigrant populations away from the white suburbanites. What does any of this have to do with the shooter? That's a great question. The shooter was a white supremacist. I'm simply describing that the reductive way that Kathy Hochul is trying to approach the subject, and the reductive way that liberals try to approach white supremacy in this country, unfortunately falls short, and that there is so much more to tackle and so much more to address when you consider how white supremacist attitudes are pumped through every facet of our existence and normalized, all the way from Fox News to the Republican Party's racial agitation, both historically and in contemporary society, all the way down to the internet and our culture and, 4chan. That's why it's a really, really difficult thing to tackle, and that's why people feel hopeless and powerless in the face of the systemic change necessary to right these wrongs. So then they end up, swinging wildly at whatever the fuck they can, and whatever the fuck they can oftentimes is like what's in front of them, culture. Oh yeah, Oscar's so white. If we have like a couple, if we change, I guess the voice actor in Big Mouth to an actual black person, systemic change will come as a consequence of that. Fuck no, of course not. Obviously not. And that's why corporations can just like give you a little bit, like drip feed you a little bit and say, oh, look at us, we're throwing up the black fist. Walmart, for example, can say they're like in support of Black Lives Matter. Meanwhile, they're pumping fuckloads of funds into local police forces so they can get their like second tank. You know what I mean? They can get like mine sweeping. They can get like tactical fucking anti-personnel landmines in like some bumfuck town with like 1,000 people. And for the record, if you want to understand white supremacy in this country, look to the most popular news broadcast. Here it is. Breaking news, 10 people dead in the Buffalo supermarket attack. Police call hate crime. Meanwhile, this is what's going on Fox News. So recognize that as well, okay? How could this have happened? Are conservative doing the same thing? What about is it moving the goalposts and deflecting? Yeah, dude. Of course they're going to do that. It's like they got egg on their face. That's it. That's why I'm seeing so much pushback from Republicans in my fucking replies on Twitter. They're absolutely going insane. Like they're doing everything they can to be like, well, what about the black guy that shot up the fucking subway? Yeah, what about him, dude? What about him? I mean, we covered that. We covered that extensively. Is there like a fucking Fox News equivalent that you can point to that's promoting like black nationalist rhetoric or some shit? Like, until like and you can't say BET, you're ridiculous. But like until you point to like the historical, until you can find the historical contextually appropriate comparison within like black nationalist fucking movements that aren't just liberatory like Black Panthers, the Black Panther Party or whatnot, because that was adequate and understandable and reasonable. There was a reasonable defense against state violence, okay? Which no such example of that exists in white power movements, until you find in contemporary society, like what, BET, are they promoting fucking, black nationalism in the same way? And not Pan-African nationalism, not liberatory black nationalism, but like black nationalism in the form of like the kind of black nationalism that like this dude supposedly believed in and espoused, which is still closer to fucking reactionary ideology than the emancipatory black nationalism that we talk about when we think about black nationalism. Okay. Until you find that kind of example, I think I'll be like, I'll be parsing through this information with the appropriate care necessary for it. Tariq Nasheed is unironically a black supremacist. Great example, dude. What the fuck does Tariq Nasheed have in comparison to Tucker Carlson? Are you fucking insane? Tucker Carlson is a household name. Tariq Nasheed is a fucking meme on the internet, dude. Dr. Umar is a meme on the internet, for the most part. It's some guy on fucking Twitter yelling, okay? And then on the other hand, you have Tucker Carlson, literally like a household name that is incredibly impactful. And once again, you have to remind yourself, as I've said, that the one-to-one comparison in this circumstance is idiotic because there is no historical systemic violence in the form of black nationalism that white people were subjected to. There is no systemic black nationalism. It's not a thing, okay? That has never happened in America. Black nationalism and just black liberation and black power movements revolve around emancipation, to end the subjugation, whether it be the abolition of slavery or whether it be civil rights. That's the difference. But when we talk about white nationalism, that's entirely different because that's a reinforcement of the state violence because the state has operated in that way. The state has operated in a white nationalist way over and over again. That's why our fucking immigration, even to this day, is white nativist, okay? It's significantly easier for you to fucking come from a white country into this one as an immigrant and to travel into this country than it is from a brown country, from a black country. It's out there. It's open. It's like fucking super easy for you to comprehend. But, what the fuck do I know? Boys, I'm a racist. If you ask, Mr. I love saying the N-word Killer Keemstar, that I'm a racist, so I don't fucking understand the intricacies of racism in this country or white supremacist violence in this country. I mean, here it is. What is the standard for a hate crime? These homies are just like working fucking overtime, dude.
To say that this was a hate crime.
Well, you have in this case, you'll have the elements of murder, the premeditation, the act of murder, that sort of the basic elements of murder. But the kicker and the enhancer in the federal system is the motivation. They have to prove the motivation is a hate towards race, religion, or
pretty obvious, I think. I mean, that's not. I don't know, boys. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that I don't think it's gonna be that difficult to find said motivation. Maybe I'm crazy. Call me crazy, but I don't think it's gonna be all that difficult to find said motivation in this circumstance. I think he pretty much wrote it and lived it. I mean, he screamed it from the fucking mountaintops, if you will.
National origin, that sort of thing. So, which doesn't seem like it's going to be a big stretch here, given what I've heard so far.
Yeah. So, Chris, I want to get into the nitty-gritty. You say our leaders need to do better. Those of us that have public platforms need to do better.
I got to pee. I'll be back.
I don't want to get into the politics of this, but I do want to talk about the inspirations.
Yeah, I hate, from a law enforcement perspective, I've had 40 years in this business. And I think my colleagues will say the same thing. Dial down the rhetoric. Every politician of every stripe seems to want to come in a situation like this and really put fuel on the fire. I've seen this governor come in 2 or 3 times now, and it's political, and it just fires things up. And that's where you have the nutcases out there like this guy who see this going on. You see somebody sort of stirring the pot, trying to demagogue the issue rather than just let the law enforcement professionals take.
Oh, dude. Oh, man. I can't believe people are making. Dude, what isn't. I mean, what won't these liberals turn into a game of political football? You know what I mean? I mean, white supremacist acts of terror. That's political now? I mean, you're crazy. Come on. Come on, dude. I mean, this is an apolitical subject. It's like, dude, what are you talking about? You're on Fox News. You're literally sandwiched between coverage of people being like, saying that immigrants are fucking dirty vermin. And the white supremacist power hour right after. And he's like, what? I mean, come on, dude. What is this? Let's dial the politics down. Can you stop making politics so political? I mean, not politics, racial violence. and its normalization, such a political subject. That's so fucked up.
Care of it. And I get so tired of that. I think my colleagues do too. You know, let the politicians step back and have the law enforcement professionals take care of this.
Bro, this is, you know what this is? A lot of people felt powerless to do anything gun control related in the aftermath of Sandy Hook. And I think we've also reached a stage where people feel powerless to do anything about white supremacist violence, okay? Because it is so normalized. It is basically a normative position that the state is going to behave in this way. I mean, and I think that after the George Floyd protests happened, at the international level, and America's immediate reaction to it was, hold on now, these protests are getting out of hand, okay? Let's fucking dial it back a little bit. And the Democratic Party's immediate goal was to stop the momentum, the actual grassroots momentum that was building behind this movement in the streets, and bring their own commodified version of it called 8 Can't Wait, which was already like law enforcement measures that were in place in localities, but they wanted to codify it at the federal level. And then they failed to even pass that fucking law, and that we completely packaged it in the form of, like, you know, TikTok, people fucking talking about, what was it? The Macklemore song, Same Love, right? Over TikTok BLM videos, right? We did that. Okay, we did this.
D's. Till we're equal, damn right I support it. No freedom till we're equal, damn right I support it.
We did that. Okay, everybody got their fucking, everybody got their kicks in. Okay, I'm not gonna fucking, you know, torture you with more of that, because we've done this before. We've looked through all this before. Okay, and then it was done. It was done. No, like, functionally, no tangible, long-lasting systemic change that occurred when people were burning fucking cop cars and police precincts in this country. And I think now at this stage, it's over. Once that happened, I think people were like, all right, fuck this. Nothing is happening. Okay? Nothing is happening. Police got more funding. Joe Biden came out earlier this week saying, hey, you know what, Jack? Use the COVID funds on cops, which they were already. Use the additional COVID funds on funding the police further, actually. That's where we're at in this fucking country, man. It's very hard not to be a doomer. I mean, I see a lot of momentum in the labor side, and that makes me happy. You got the Amazon Labor Union. You got Starbucks organizing all across the country, okay? And that kind of stuff makes me very excited for the future of the labor movement in this country. But it's like, but other than that, it is very, very difficult to look to what's happening here and not realize that these guys are just basically doing like victory laps on America's dead carcass, okay? American progressive movement's dead carcass here. That's it. It's the same thing that you see with the Roe v. Wade battle, and it's the same fucking thing that you're seeing right now with racial violence in this country. It is significantly more complicated than simply stating, oh man, this is about, you know, social media stopping hate speech from happening, or social media being inadequate from stopping hate speech from happening. You have to remember, like, dude, there is an irreparable shift in society if people hearing like psychotic white supremacist ramblings go, I like that, I agree with that, fuck it, I'm gonna do that. Okay? We have far bigger problems to tackle than hate speech on social media platforms, which you should combat, of course, okay? Because it's horrible, it's awful. But, like, it is an admission of defeat when you turn around and you say, wow, dude, I mean, shit, man, this fascism stuff is so easy to just fucking break the brains of our youth that they see it on a fucking forum where these, like, turbo virgins gather and fantasize about like a racially pure America as though that's gonna make them fuckable. It's not. And they're like, yeah, this is me. This is my future. I love this shit. That's crazy that people can be radicalized like that. Well, they can, because it's being reinforced through every facet of society, from our structures, even our infrastructure, all the way to our most popular broadcasters. And trying to tackle it from the point of view of culture is just feckless.